Yeah, we'll start out with our introductory blurb.
Yes, we are starting off with our introductory blurb. Welcome to the Tales from the Forlorn Dopes, everyone. My name is Cybersmily, and I am one of the
My
hosts.
name is... Yeah, I am the other host. My name is Wisdom, with 3 zeros at the end. We are super excited about today's show. But first, before we get into that, there has been a tragic passing.
Yes.
Jim Ward has shuffled off the mortal coil, and he is gone to reside with his deities and demigods now.
Yes, I hope he's in, I would say Valhalla, or Olympia. Hopefully he's not in Gehenna or Hades or one of those lower planes. So,
Now, that dude is somewhere cool playing with the greats.
my condolences to his family and all his friends. So.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you will be missed.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
to get started, we have a special guest, Mr. David Ackerman. Is it Ackerman or Ackerman Gray? I know you've been credited.
Ackerman Gray was the hyphenated married name, but I am divorced now, so I understand. Mm-hmm.
Just Ackerman. All right.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, David Ackerman, if you pick up any book, like any book in the Cyberpunk franchise from 2013 to Red, chances are you'll see his name somewhere in there.
Well, especially some of the ones that came after like 1997 or so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I started really poking my nose in. So. Mm-hmm.
So before we get started, we're going to do what we call the full auto questionnaire, which is basically short quick questions with short, quick answers. There's no wrong answers, except there might be one that might be wrong.
So don't underestimate my ability to get them wrong. All right.
Well, we'll see. So first question, 2020 or 2013, 2020, 2045 or 2077?
Right now, actually, I'm really enjoying 2045.
All right.
I had a lot of great time in 2020, but kind of started in 2013. Definitely started playing it. That was my first gaming in Cyberpunk. But 2045 is a little bit more wide open. I like our system in 2045 a little better. It's a little more streamlined and I think a lot more intimate. So no, I'm liking 2045.
All right. What is your favorite Cyberpunk role?
Favorite Cyberpunk rule?
Roll. Career.
Roll. Okay, my bad. That's a good one, actually. It depends. It depends on the version. In 2020, I think I really liked the fixer. I really liked being the one to manipulate stuff and make the deals. In 2045, believe it or not, the netrunners gotten really cool.
All right.
That's
yeah. Favorite piece of cyberware?
Gotta be optics. Optics with infrared. Yeah.
All right.
Well, okay, no, wait. Okay, that's beyond the basics. Because you always got to have the basics. You always got to have the ports. You always got to have the interface nodes and stuff. I mean, that's baseline. But then if you're talking optional, augmetics, then yeah, optics.
Okay.
Optics with infrared and marquee.
Yep. That's a good one.
Okay.
Favorite cyberpunk weapon?
I tend towards the Mandalorian. I mean, not the Mandalorian, the Malorian. The Malorian. It's a classic. It's just classic. Okay. Trouble is, you got to have a cyberarm to use it.
All right. Here's going to be. Here's one of the difficult questions. Favorite Cyberpunk Red or 2020 book?
Wow. Okay. 2020, I'm going to say Night City. I still think that is just one of the best source books ever, and I didn't even work on it. That was before I got there. Red, I think the core book is just amazing. I think it really gives you everything you need to get started, and outlines and projects the world really well and presents it in a whole new way that I think really works. So, and again, that's not me. I mean, I don't make commission on that. Okay. So,
Here's a more difficult question. Least favorite Cyberpunk
Okay.
Red or 2020 book?
okay, 2020s, man, I had a hard time getting into the corporate profile books. They were just a little dry for me. Okay. So those ones, they were great reference, I guess, but they were hard to read. You know, like red. I don't know. I have to think about it. I mean, now you're trying to catch me up, aren't you?
I mean, it just has to be one or the other. It does. You don't
You
have
don't
to.
have to.
Yeah.
pick
Okay.
one for me.
I'm gonna stop there. Okay. Because so far I've really liked what we've done for red. I think that Jay's outlined really good core books that really add to the product line.
Yep.
So it's not like I feel we've I mean, we'll get to the weak stuff at some point, but just not yet.
Right. So here's a question
They're still
on
very-
2077. You might have a answer to this,
Reference?
but there's going to be we'll see. Pan Am,
Okay.
Judy, Rogue, or Alex?
Well, now keep in mind, I'm old school, so I'm going to tend towards Rogue.
All
I
right.
have, scoped those characters, and for everybody's knowledge, I haven't had a chance to play through 2077. Strictly a matter of time, not desire. I would love to, but hey, Rogue has always been my
Yep.
I'm
And
Rogue or
that's-
Spider. That you give me Rogue or Spider Murphy any day. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Next question is Lucy, Rebecca, or Kiwi?
See, I'm not that familiar with them, so I'm not sure I'd want to throw that out right now. I'm not sure
Okay.
I could give you that would be a totally random guess.
All right.
So.
Carrie, River, Goru, or Reed?
Again, I have not had a chance to play through, and those names aren't registering the way they should.
Okay.
This
Nope.
is,
No
you're
problem.
catching my blind spots, man.
I will pass through these questions, so they are definitely
The
specific.
27/7 character, and that's not that I don't think it's a great game. I just have not had the time to play through it. I study some of the background material and where it connects with 2045, because we've got to do that blending. But
Yep.
I have not had a chance to dive deep,
Okay, no worries.
much to my regret.
Next question.
Favorite
Go ahead, Derek.
favorite Night City gang.
Okay, I wouldn't want to be in them, but Metal Storm is just a great, just ultimate hard ass. Okay, that's what you expect from a cyberpunk gang.
I agree 100% on that.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, again, wouldn't want to join them, but I'll fight them any day, and those are the kind of guys you're gonna want. You expect to fight.
Yeah.
Favorite Megacorp?
Biotechnica. I think that they still have they do a lot of nasty things, and because they kind of have the image of a good guy corp, they often get away with that. But I still think they have the potential for being one of the more positive corps. I will also throw in a nod for Rockland Augmetics that I created. So,
Okay.
Favorite Cyberpunk movie?
wow. Think about that. There's been a lot. Although the one that jumps out at me, believe it or not, is a weird little one, and it's more cyberpunk in attitude than true material, was Death Machine.
Nobody's ever brought that one up, but yeah, that's totally. It definitely has the attitude. I would classify it as a cyberpunk.
I mean,
movie.
I'm not sure. Now, if you go into anime, that opens up a whole new category.
We can totally include animes.
Yeah, so I mean, now you're talking Ghost in the Shell. Any number of the Oshi Ghost in the Shells are brilliant. So I would go with any of those. So as just
honestly,
the best.
I preferred standalone complex over the films.
I think some of the series, the original series, I thought was beautiful.
The
I thought it
original
went into
series,
a lot
not the
greater
new
depth.
CGI thing.
especially with the Fujikomas and everything. I thought that you
Yeah.
really got to know what the Fujikomas were, which I thought was fantastic. Um, but in terms of movie, I think some of the Oshi, the first two in particular, are just brilliant. I didn't think much of the Scarlett Johansson
Yeah.
live action one, although visually amazing.
Yes.
But
Yeah, it was really
they made
pretty.
so many changes. Yeah, it lost some of the heart of the story. I think it lost its point.
Yeah, I
So,
think they should have gone with a completely original story for it,
uh,
as opposed to just trying to make a live action version of the Oshi film.
Short.
yeah, especially
Uh,
because the Oshi one was so perfect visually. It's like
yeah,
you're
I
just
mean,
recreating, the scenes basically.
All right.
yeah,
Although I will say the robotic geisha scene at the beginning was actually quite good.
so fucking cool.
Hmm.
So short, quick answers. Um,
Okay.
He
favorite
yells at me about that every time.
favorite cyberpunk fictional character.
Ah, oh, Molly Millions.
Okay.
Dick, Gibson, Stevenson, or Sterling?
Oh, okay. For pure cyberpunk, I will probably go with Gibson. Although I will say Sterling did some of the best transhumanist stuff with his the solar system series that he did, which I thought was amazing. The Shaper Mechanist stories.
Yeah.
For pure cyberpunk, I would tend towards Gibson still. That was the first, and I think it did so much to just set. He did so much to set the mold, in a way that even some of the others who came along simultaneously, he set the tropes.
Yeah.
So,
Honestly, today, I
mm,
think in the future we need to replace Sterling with Effinger,
that's fair. Although, although
or at
Effinger, I
least add
think, never saw
Effinger.
himself as a cyberpunk. I don't think he saw himself as a cyberpunk author. I think he saw himself as just science fiction. So,
Yeah.
hmm
Favorite cyberpunk novel.
again, I think I'm gonna the first one's Neuromancer and that whole series.
The
I
Sprawl.
thought, I mean, I remember the first time I read Neuromancer. Yeah, just the Sprawl series. Yeah, I remember the first time I read Neuromancer, and just the world that was portrayed felt
Yeah.
so. It was not the polished future that we were raised to expect growing up in the 60s and 70s.
From
But
Star
that also
Trek.
made it feel so much more real. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love Star Trek. Don't get me wrong. And I'm actually very much an optimist. But at the same time, there was just a reality to it. The Rastafarian orbital jocks, just this whole sense of how things could start out brilliantly, but then just tend towards decay or towards wear and just start to be taken for granted. The wonder wears off, and suddenly these things that we see as amazing now just become the day to
Day to day
day
life.
work that these guys do. Yeah, exactly. And I
Got
thought that was brilliantly rendered.
got two more questions. Favorite cyberpunk
Hmm.
comic or graphic novel?
I haven't read that many cyberpunk graphic novels or ones. The only one
Manga
that
count.
actually, well, again, now we're talking Ghost in the Shell again. If that's the
Yep.
case, then I would still go with Ghost in the Shell. So, because if it was Western, there's the only one I remember was that one that was done on the Mac, back in the day,
Oh,
on the early
Shatter?
Mac. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, which actually was not bad. So,
No.
yeah, but I still would go with Ghost in the Shell then. Yeah.
Okay. And
Hmm.
final question: is Shadowrun cyberpunk?
Is Shadowrun Cyberpunk?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. I mean, it's got all those tropes. It just layers in additional things. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a hater.
That is one that I think I've come to the agreement that it is cyberpunk adjacent. I don't think it's true
Um,
cyberpunk though.
okay. Well, that's if you want to split that. That's I again totally. Your mileage may vary. I don't. I just don't feel like it's got to get ostracized as like, oh no, that's just fantasy. It's like They're just welding together different elements from different genres,
Well, I
and
mean,
still creating something that has a cyberpunk vibe to it in many ways.
I don't think it's really about ostracizing it necessarily, because I mean, Jesus, I still own a ton of Shadowrun books. Just art alone, they're amazing. But it's like Akira, like the psychic powers just kind of set it aside from being what the pure cyberpunk setting type thing. Cyberpunk adjacent is not an insult. It's just
and that's an interesting point that I wanted to bring up. I'm not sure I'd see Akira as being a cyberpunk movie. It's a dystopian film, but there's no real cyber in it. The kids are, the fantastical element of it, the psychic children, but that's a science fiction element as compared to a purely cyberpunk element.
Right, but it's in a totally cyberpunk setting, like Neo Tokyo is.
Well, the vibe is again there, but I don't remember any specific cyberware or anything really being prominent. It was not the net and everything. The specific tropes of cyberpunk do seem to be absent, as I remember. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I really should rewatch that. So,
I mean, if there's one universal truth in the genre, it's that nobody can define what the genre actually is.
And I'm totally good with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, by that definition, you may have a hard time defining Blade Runner as cyberpunk, simply because it's not about cyberpunk. It's not about cyberware or the net either.
Yeah. I have heard that argument many a time.
It definitely has biotechnology, right?
Yes, it does.
So,
although it seems so schizophrenic sometimes about that. So, go ahead.
But you like the original definitely didn't have the chrome aspect of it, right? But,
exactly.
But the second one, definitely had.
And you also have to give the first one credit for just nailing the vibe and the look and the feel.
I mean, it created the look. Like that's
it really did. It really did. So,
well, okay. It didn't create the look. The look was created back in the 1930s by Fritz Lang with Metropolis.
Okay, I'm not sure I'd argue with that either. So, and that would be an interesting stretch to include that as a cyberpunk. But an argument can be made.
It's got cyber in it. Like they turned the chick into a robot. Like that's
absolutely. And it is very much about a revolution. So
yeah, they got flying cars and giant metropolises that are completely.
It's definitely about income inequality and the street having to fight for its own place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, quickly to let our what is it? Our listeners, quick credentials for you. I'm going to read off all the credits. So, Rocker Boy, Chromebook 2, 3, 4, Deep Space, Bartmoss's Brain Blowout, Edgerunners Incorporated, Eurotour, Firestorm, both Stormfront and Shockwave, Land of the Free, Live and Direct, Maximum Metal, Near Orbit, Neo Tribes, Pacific Rim, Rach Bartmoss's Guide to the Net, Rough Guide to the UK, When Gravity Fails. He also was a writer in Cyber Generation, which also included Bastille Day, Echo Front, Generation Gap, Media Front, Virtual Front. You also were an editor on V3. We'll not talk about that. Cyber Red Jumpstarter Kit, Cyber Red Core Book, Danger Gal Dossier. You also worked outside of Cyberpunk with Castle Falkenstein, Steam Age as a writer, Bubblegum Crisis.
That's my favorite thing that Artel ever did besides Cyberpunk was Bubblegum Crisis.
Mechton Mecha Manual Volume 1. And outside of Artel Soaring, you worked on Star Wars D6, the Tapani Sector Instant Adventure as a writer.
Tapani Sector, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did I forget anything?
I think I've contributed.
Mechton
a little
third
bit of
edition?
Mechton work. Yeah, the second edition, the Mechton 2. So, or no, you're right, it is third edition actually. Yeah. So did some work on that as well and on that line. So, but hey, thank you. I mean, I'd forgotten about some of those. So thank you very much. So,
yeah, I mean, just prolific. Like prolific.
Yep.
Well, we were putting out a lot of stuff back then, and honestly, I only got a chance to work my window back in the '90s. It was about a 4.5 year window. So that tells you just how much product we were putting out back
Yep.
then. And I didn't
Well,
work
I
on
mean,
every product.
you worked on Rocker Boy for the 2013 set. That was like in the
That's
80s.
true. That's true. That was one of my first. Actually, I think that was my first writing commission from them. I was not yet. I did that as a freelancer. So that was my first gig with them. Derek Quintanar, I think, brought me in on that because I'd gotten to know Mike a little bit, and Mike put his name out, and Derek was the editor on it, and offered something to me. So I put something together for that. That was fantastic. Actually, it was a great opportunity.
Yeah. So,
And
how did you get introduced to Altar Saurian? I mean, it sounds like you started as a freelancer. I mean,
no, exactly. Okay.
how did it all work?
Back in the day, I was living in the Bay Area. I picked up a copy of Mechton 2, actually, the purple cover. Okay. And
Yeah.
this was great. And at the time, I was just getting tapped into anime, and I'd met a really cool guy who worked at a store in Berkeley, Mike Ebert, who was an artist, who was turning me on to all sorts of anime. This was the days when we were getting all sorts of illegal, bootleg tapes and everything back and forth. And he was turning me on all
I remember those
and
days.
I saw Mechton and went, okay, Mike, you really need to contact these guys because you'd be the perfect artist for this. So he reached out to Artal Saurian, and somehow along the way, I ended up kind of connecting with Mike through that, with Mike Pondsmith. And we just got to know each other a little bit. And then I ended up working for ChessX, which produced game products and so forth, dice and other game accessories. And they ended up being in the same. Artal Saurian moved into the same building, this big old Del Monte warehouse in Berkeley that was home to Games of Berkeley, ChessX, and to Artal Saurian all at the same time. So it became kind of the gaming hub of the East Bay and such. And we ended up hanging out more and more. I started coming over and doing games at his house a little bit. When he had, Eric, who did the, never mind. Let's just say that, yes, got more and more integrated with that, got to know each other, became friends, and basically got the opportunity to start working on a few projects, basically as a freelancer, doing some artwork for some of the Dream Park stuff. Honestly, not my proudest work, mainly because I don't think I did a good job on it. But getting a few writing opportunities, more and more, getting through the near orbit scenario and so forth. And we just got to know each other and got along. And I was already a Cyberpunk fan at that point. Like I say, I had read Gibson back in the early '80s and was like a huge cyber fan. So, we just kept talking the same talk. And so it just became more and more.
Not to date you, but was this like college age, after college? Because the one thing that I've
this
noticed...
would have been just after college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that we've found from other people we've interviewed is like, everyone who like joined Arctis, just straight out of college, or even in college, and just starting to work on these awesome products that Artal Saurian put out back in the day.
I was probably a little bit older than most of the other crew. About the time I really started doing the freelancing with him, I was probably 27, or so. I had just done some graduate work at San Francisco State, and then was off just trying to make a living in the Bay Area basically at the time. And just got more and more into it. But then, like I say, I ended up being production manager for ChessX for a long time, which did some publishing and did some. So I got to oversee some of that. And
I tell you what I miss. I miss those ChessX vinyl book covers.
Dragon skins. Yes.
I love those things.
In fact, I was the one that got the Artal Saurian rights, the rights from Artal Saurian to do some Cyberpunk Dragon skins because I knew Mike. So
they were so
exactly.
Cool. I've got one of each. So, and trying to find extras of them is just hair pulling.
I know. Really, they should really come back to those again. So, but and because we were constantly interacting with each other in the building and so forth. And he saw what I did as production manager. One day, basically, he and Lisa came back from, I think, a trip to Italy to dealing with some of the licensors over there, and called me up and said, "Hey, man, I need a production manager." So do you want to be a production, Artel Soren's production manager? And I was like, hell yeah. So, and that's when I came in and started working with him. So, and that would have been
why the majority
probably
of
about 94.
And that's why the majority of credits are you doing layout and editor.
Exactly, and just overseeing coordination of all the projects and so forth. Helping make sure that they could get, setting up printers, setting up budgets initially, and then working on specific projects as project manager. We had usually several people working on given products as what we call the project gods at the time. So they would be like, okay, that's your project. You need to get it in for this line, and I'm okay, and just helping coordinate that.
Right.
So, yes. And then filling in whenever it was necessary, basically. If a project was falling down or something like that, then we'd step in and do an emergency triage and go, okay, what do we got to do to get this thing back on schedule and that kind of stuff. So,
cool.
And it was a blast, I'll tell you. As you say, as everybody seems to have probably reiterated, it was like working in a big family. It was the most fun I think I've ever had on the job. I mean, it was exhausting. In fact, at one point, Mike likes to tell the story of literally locking me out of the office because I was working so much. So, and my wife wanted me to come home. So,
go home, David.
Exactly. So, but that's the kind of thing where we would stay late at night and just working on editing or layout or something like that because we were really enjoying it. We played video games in between and so forth because the computers we had at work were so much better than ones we had at home. But at the same time, it was still
LAN party. I'm getting paid for it.
So, but at the same time, it was just we were having such a great time just doing this work. I remember that working on the original Ray Barbermash's Guide to the Net, which was a pretty elaborate work at the time. I was putting in 12-hour days, easy, trying to get that thing together, but loving it. So
yes, it's actually speaking of that product. We talked to Ed Balmy about Rach Bottomos, and that you basically were the voice of Spider Murphy doing all those sidebars. Yep. Did you talk with Lisa on how to get a point of view for Spider, or was it just
a little? But honestly, it was more between Ed and I, and that's not to slam Lisa. It's just that she was usually like, "Oh, you just go do it. It's okay." So it was that kind of thing. And Ed and I just had a great chemistry. So, and he was a madman. The race is his id let loose, basically, on the page, and I loved reading the stuff he would turn in. So
the work you guys put in on that book on just the personalities of those two characters, they defined them, and that all that follows through. Like it's like that's heavily represented in the video game. I know you haven't played it yet, but I think you're going to get quite the thrill.
That's good to know. So no, man. I would work with Ed on Raish again any day. It was amazing, especially when we switched over to CyberGen, and he also wrote the Wizard's Guide, basically the net mutants and all he did most of that as well. And I'll tell you, sometimes as an editor, I was trying to fill in. And it is so hard to do Raish's voice. It is so, idiosyncratic and so much Ed.
He's a nutbag.
It's very hard to edit. Yeah, exactly. So, but that's the beauty of it. That was his creation, and I still love it. So and I will pull Raish out anytime I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So were you an active player in any of Mike's games or anyone else?
A little bit, but honestly, man, as a group, we were usually so busy working on the stuff that we rarely had the chance to play it outside of the office. We would set up playtest groups for other people and so forth, but we rarely had the chance to play it ourselves. We were so busy working on it, and usually by the time you're done with a 12-hour day working on Cyberpunk, the last thing you're going to do is go home and play it. On top of that, so I know I did run some campaigns during that time with other people, other friends, and other gaming groups, and had a blast with it. But rarely within the actual office. So it was almost with other outside groups. Usually they have a go off for a weekend with friends, and they said, "Dave, run Cyberpunk." Like, okay, here, so we'll run Cyberpunk because it was with a different group and it had a different tone.
Yeah. A little bit of a separate vibe.
Exactly.
So one of the things we've been trying to do with interviewing all these people uh, is track down which iconic creators were played by whom.
Mm.
So were any of yours? Did any of your characters or NPCs make it into the iconic tiers of the
You
lore?
know, to my knowledge, not really. I mean, I I helped craft Raish a little bit, but honestly, he was still primarily Ed's baby, and I helped craft Spider a bit. But again, that started with Lisa. So I'm not sure I can claim any of that. I can say that the main character in Castle Falkenstein was based on me.
Okay.
Oh,
So
very cool.
uh-huh. So that was that. Yeah, apparently that was Mike's thing. He wanted, he chose to throw me to an alternate dimension. So,
Nice.
or at least what he imagined me to be in an alternate dimension. So that, which was
I
very
mean,
cool.
that's showing some love right there.
It was no, nothing but flattered. And then when Ed came out, you were talking that he was writing one of the novels for Falk, and stayed with me, and we constantly went through. And he was like trying to pick my brain for the voice and what the character would be doing and so forth. So that was a lot of fun. Um,
Cool.
We
mhm.
talked earlier about just how many books you worked on. What was your favorite one to work on? Which one are you most
Man.
proud of?
Ooh. Okay. As a line, I am very proud of Bubblegum Crisis. I
You
think,
should be.
yeah, Benjamin Wright, was the lead on that. But he was very generous in letting me, work with him on it. And I just love that line. I think we really hit. I don't think there's any dead weight in those books. And I think we did, as fanboys, we did our damnedest to cram in every bit of information we could glean, to make them like basically fanboy reference books as much as games. And every bit of art, every factoid, everything we could dig up. And try to also make them look really good and read really well. And I think we succeeded. I feel really good about that.
I
Yeah,
mean, to this day, Bubblegum Crisis is still my favorite anime of all time.
I can't fault you
Um,
on that one, man.
and I got into that around 1987, I think. The same
Hmm.
time I got into the manga for Appleseed, and it was my love
Hmm.
of those two things that when one of my friends was all like, "Hey, come play Cyberpunk with us this weekend," I'm like, "What's that?" When I play it, I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, oh, Lord, this is
Yeah.
Bubblegum Crisis, Appleseed, and Blade Runner all put together. Those are my three favorite things ever." And now I know the name of the genre. Now I've got this game that handles those perfectly, and the
Hmm.
references that were scattered all throughout oh my god. So when you
Hmm.
guys, who were already my favorite publisher by far, put out the Bubblegum Crisis books, it was like somebody had yanked a dream from my head and was all like, "Here you go."
Good. Then we did our job. That was the key. Again, they were again as huge anime heads, both of us at the time, all of us actually in the office. I don't think any of us weren't. And as the kind of people that just would always want to find a guide like that on our favorite shows,
Yeah,
here we felt we had the chance to create that guide, and we were damn well going to do it. So, and no, so I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that felt right to you guys. So, I mean, I have things I'm proud of in all the lines. I still like the Cyber Generation line. I thought the books we did were really good for that. I think they played out. They advanced the story well, and again, I tried to make sure they didn't have any fat in them. Um,
yeah. I
but
mean, I love the Cyber Generation books. I was never, I, I was never going to like. I'm not a big fan of superpowers in my cyberpunk, but the
mhm,
rest of the books, besides the superpowers, are
yeah,
so straight, such a straight continuation of the vibe and the
yeah,
feeling of cyberpunk that like those books. Yeah,
hmm
I love them.
I
They
get
make
you, man.
great extra
Kind of why
resources.
That's kind of why I tucked in the edgerunners character generation in the second edition, because I wanted to give people the chance to who didn't really want to play the kids, but they had a group that wanted to play Cyber Generation. They could cross over, they could blend, so they get a chance to do it, to share that. But again, even the Firestorm and the Stormfront books, again, felt those turned out really well as well. Craig Shealy, Ed Bolme, other writers that all just did an amazing job. So, and we tried to keep them tight, and we tried to make sure that, when you picked it up and went through it, you got a lot for your money.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, you worked on a lot of things. Was there any of the books you really wish you were able to work on, or maybe something that you wanted to work on but never made, came to fruition?
Yeah, like a project that just for whatever reason never came to light.
I'm kind of obviously the most obvious one would be the third book of the Firestorm, or of the Firestorm series, which would have been Data Crash, because that would have been the mapping out how everything falls apart and basically sets up the situation that plays into Red down the line. So, and I really would have liked to have had a chance to do that. Obviously, Ed would have been a part of that, because the rabbits were everywhere doing their mischief. And I think it would have been nice to be able to show the deconstruction of the Cyberpunk universe and the beginning, the seeds of what was going to come next. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to do that. So outside of that, I mean, there were products that got done. Like I say, Night City, I'm sorry that happened before I got there, because that is just an amazing product, and would have loved to have been able to contribute to that. But other than that, no, we got, especially back in the 2020 days, we got most of the stuff out we wanted to get out. It was only just towards the end that we had to kind of cut the line short. I'd say just one book short.
Right. So, how did you get into gaming to begin with? I mean, was it a hobby that you got in with Dungeons and Dragons, or is it some other avenue?
Who came back from college with a Xerox copy of Empire of the Petal Throne by TSR in 1975, and started, because I was always a cyber science fiction head when I was young, and such. So, and he started running me in games, when I was 15, and I was hooked. The fact that here was games that allowed you to write your own stories and play out your own options, and oh my God, I was addicted right out of the gate. And honestly, I don't think I've ever looked back. It is still my prime addiction. And from there, just kept building. I've been gaming solids pretty much since. When the heyday hit, probably in the late 80s, or excuse me, in the late 70s, early 80s, that's when I was into Traveler, I was into Gamma World, I was into Stormbringer and Call of Cthulhu and all of that. And then when I went to the Bay Area, I got a chance to work on Jarun, Skyruns of Jarun, if anybody remembers that obscure little game, which I still think is an amazing game. But yes, so I got to work with, met Andrew Leaker and Miles Tevez at San Francisco State when I was going there, and got a chance to get to know them. And they asked me to come in and do some work for them there. And that was my first publishing experience, getting a chance to actually work on in publishing. And then just kind of went from there. And honestly, from that point forward, I just stepped into one thing after another. So worked in a bookstore for a while, but then got on with ChessX as the production manager, and then just moved on through and stayed in publishing pretty much up through about 2003.
Wow. Cool.
Mm-hmm. I'm still do it. So
that's good. Yeah, that was one of our other questions. Because it sounds like you're busy between your full-time job and your part-time job working with our Tassorian. Whether or not you had the time to actually still game or not.
Yeah, I still have a close group of friends out here that and one of them I have known since I was 19, that I still game with. So, and my brother as well, who obviously got me started on all this. So yeah, and we still love doing it. It's still some of our favorite ways of spending time together. So absolutely, and as well as a couple of other very talented game masters out here. And there's more that I need to get involved with. Again, that's where the time limitation comes in. I haven't had a chance to cast the net any wider because I know that there are others out here I'd love to do more with. I just haven't had the time.
All right. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that you
Mm-hmm.
still game. I love that it's still a big part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's
it's
definitely a favorite escape. Yes.
yeah. I know everybody like COVID hit gaming groups so hard. I know so many groups that just practically like dissolved because they couldn't
Yeah.
get together.
Yeah.
Online gaming became a big thing. Do you do any of that?
Actually did some of that during COVID. In fact, I was in a game that Mike Pondsmith ran for a while,
Oh,
doing started with Zoom and then we switched over to Google. Um, and it was great because it gave us a chance to do it. But I'll be honest, it's just not the same experience for me.
no.
You need to be sitting around the table. You need to be drinking coffee and eating peanuts and making bad jokes over each other, and that's just part of it. That's part of the joy. So, and then getting all spun up together as the scene gets tense or the action spins up and so forth, and seeing, it's yeah, I think it needs the FaceTime. It really does.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
gaming in
Yeah,
person is always going to be better. I
exactly.
like gaming online, but given a choice, if I could bring any of my online groups to my house, I would.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's not. I'm not slamming it. And in fact, it's better than not gaming.
Yeah,
So
no, it's
I'm
saved
absolutely
many people's sanity because
exactly. So if it's the only way you can do it and have a great time. And I will probably do it some more. But but it's just not my favorite way. My favorite way is still, like I say, face to face.
Right. So we know you worked on the new edition of Cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
Which areas did
Mm-hmm.
you work on?
Oh, well, okay. Initially, I was kind of Mike's sounding board when he was throwing a lot of ideas around about where he wanted to take the red and so forth. So there was a little bit of brainstorming there, but I'm not going to take a lot of credit. This red is very much Mike's vision. Okay, so but I was happy to be someone he was throwing ideas off of and giving him feedback on it. Then as things started to solidify, he asked me to come in and write. They asked me to actually come in and write it. Like I say, I created one of the Neocorps and did some editing and so forth on the core book, and also then on the and editing and some cleanup on the Jumpstart kit. So including bringing in like the things I'd written before, like an introduction to what a role playing game is and
Hmm.
so forth. So, and again, just cleaning it up. And then just started doing a lot of editing and I was kind of a reader for some of the projects as they went along to give feedback, to
Right.
go, okay, this is a cool adventure, but what if you what if you added this? Or what if we tried this with it and so forth to give it a little bit more spark or something. So, and been doing that with working with Jay on some of those things. But again, he's done a really great job. So I don't want to take away from him. Um, and then he asked me in on Danger Gal to write up the Plea NCPD, which I thoroughly enjoyed because of my background with insecurity. So, and and like I said, I've just been and I'm working on a couple of other things with them right now for the Tales of the Forlorn Hope, the new one, the Tales of the Red there. So, and kind of
we're
had my
very
hand in kind
excited
of.
about that one.
It's gonna
Uh,
really be cool.
I mean,
It's gonna be seeing a whole just matrix of personalities, which I think is brilliant. So go
I
ahead.
mean, we loved the original so much that that's what we named our show off of. We
Mm-hmm.
had Will Moss on a while back,
Mm-hmm.
and we're happy to see that he's returning as well.
So
Um,
yes, yes.
it, it's
Again, he's
I
go ahead.
love the new people that are working with our Talsorian, but man, it makes me feel so good to see anytime I see any of the old names get get some love in the new edition.
Oh, absolutely. There's again, we are. if we can tap some of the old guard, that's hey, that's why I'm there. So
Yeah,
it's just whether they have the window and whether what their lives are allowing them at this point, because everybody's just moved on so far.
yeah,
And as you get older, man, your life gets so full. It
yeah.
gets very hard to carve out the time and the space. Um,
Yeah, the other thing with outsourcing was how progressive it was, even for a gaming company. I think the whole culture of cyberpunk was ahead of its time
Yeah.
in
I'd like
portraying.
to think so.
I
So
mean, in both the source book for When Gravity Fails
Hmm.
and Tales from the Forlorn Hope, there are transgender characters, and this was back in the early '90s,
Yeah.
and they weren't portrayed as a joke. They weren't portrayed as villains. They were portrayed as sympathetic, normal people, and
Hmm.
that was so far ahead. I'd never seen that in a gaming book before,
You know the.
and it
Uh,
was.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say it was just so far ahead of what everybody else was doing at the time that it blew my mind. Um,
And and thank you. But you know what the weird thing is? Because even when I was working on When Gravity Fails, it didn't strike me as being that odd. It
no,
didn't.
and that's the beauty of how it comes through in the books. Like, it's not
Yeah,
portrayed as odd. It's not portrayed as different.
it
It's
just
just they're
is.
normal fucking people. They just
But
are
then again,
that. This go
but then
ahead.
again, I was a part of the generation that was raised on Samuel Delaney, and Samuel R. Delaney is a writer and so forth. And there were, transgender characters in his stories. There was, all sorts of LGBTQ issues in it, and they seemed normal. That just seemed, they. It's the one thing I've really come to realize is the power of media to shape our minds as we grow up. I was raised,
Yeah,
earlier we mentioned Star Trek and so forth, and other media that at the time now it seems like it may have been, in a way, kind of stunt casting and so forth, or things like that. But when you're watching it as a kid, that becomes normal.
yep.
I
Watching,
mean, I
go ahead.
100%. I think I was about 11 years old when World According to Garp. I saw that,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Yes.
was. I was watching because it was I was a big fan of Mork and Mindy, and hey, Mork's in a movie. But it was the first time I was ever exposed to John Lithgow,
Yes.
and his his character in that movie, Roberta, just normal. You sympathize with her, like
Mm-hmm.
you see the struggle, and then it shows like the dark side of equality and all that. Not that there's really a dark side to equality, but there's this in any time you have two sides to a story, you're going to see an extreme side. You've got that with the Ellen Jamesians and all that. But it
Yeah.
just,
Exactly.
yeah, it fomented in my, like, I don't know. I've never had a problem with transgender or LGBTQ, like, ever in my life. Have I ever seen that as a problem?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I was exposed to media where it was normalized.
Exactly.
Everything else always portrayed them as either jokes or villains.
Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, because I'm a little generation before, it was, race and things like that. And it was like, but I
Yeah,
was raised on shows like Julia and Star Trek and such, where that was just, it was normal for me to see, I had a crush on Diane Carroll. I mean, it was, because she was beautiful,
no,
and Michelle
absolutely.
Nicole and all of this. And, so there was none of that, it just, when you're six, that's fantastic, and then you that becomes embedded, so that you. And so when we got to things like this, where I was reading Effinger and other, and let's say Delaney, who I'd read a decade before, it was just like, okay, yeah, this is the way what the world is going to be. This is going to be It's already a possibility, and it's going to become even more prevalent. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's just
I
where
mean, when
it
you
is.
give people in a fictional setting, when you give people the opportunity to alter their bodies so drastically, people are going to be what they want to be.
Exactly.
And that's what you're going to see is people being who they want to be.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting in that I'm glad that the dialogue is coming out now far more, because it does need to be talked about. That people's identity does have a polarization that they might be in the wrong body. Often in science fiction, it's simply portrayed more as a fashion choice rather than a choice to try to find the body that truly fits you. You know,
Yeah.
but now it opens up the chance to have the dialogue of, okay, who are we, and if our body doesn't fit, is that what we need to change? So, which I think has been fantastic, and if that's the dialogues we need to have.
I
And we
agree.
did try.
And
I mean, yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, for me, the best fiction out there, it has always been the ones that tackled issues of displacement and the outcasts, like,
Mm-hmm.
and anything to normalize that. Like you said, Star Trek, that was the basis of the show. Was, look, the future isn't going to be this hateful, jumbled mess. Or at the very least, we'll find different things to hate and be divisive over. But like race, that's not going to be a thing. Gender, sexual orientation, nobody's going to care about in the future because there are better things to worry about.
Well, I think with Star Trek,
Exactly.
they brought up political points, but as kids, you didn't understand all the politics behind it. Like, and I forget the episode where they have the half white, half black.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the two
us see your last
remaining,
battle.
the two who are last of their race are like, well, I hate him. It's like, why? Because he's black on the right side, and it's like, dude, you guys look the same. And they're like, no, we need to kill each other. And it's like you exterminated yourselves over basically stupidity, and destroyed your whole race.
But the beauty of it as a kid, when you're seeing it as a kid, is you come back and go, of course, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And that becomes the default for you.
That is 100% correct.
Yeah. And that was the power of it. So that, it's funny that how often as an adult I get reminded how much it's like, why is this an issue? I don't know, because you didn't watch that shit.
Yeah.
So,
Or you watched it and the message just went over your head completely. You were just there for
that's true.
For the pretty colors on screen. It's like people who complain about the X-Men being woke. I'm like, dude, how did you make it through the 80s reading the X-Men and come out with these views that you're holding?
Exactly. It's all about race. It was a total allegory for race. Exactly. And again, with Mike, I mean, how could we not be ready to tackle those issues? How could we turn away from anything like that? That had been his life, dealing with some of those things. And he was certainly not going to, shy away from making sure that whatever needed to be addressed got addressed.
Right.
That we're not here to play it safe. So, and again, it didn't feel like we were being really edgy and out there though at the time. It just felt like, no, this is what you do. This is what the future is going to be. These are the options that are going to be on the table, and this is where you go, and this is how you do it.
Yep.
So, if in many ways we're actually maybe a little more conscious of it now as we're working on Red, because so many new things have come into play: pronouns, gender fluidity, things like that.
The society is society has moved to a point where those conversations can happen now. Exactly. Like everybody's acting like it's a new thing, but it's not new. It's just that people finally feel safe enough to air these opinions and these grievances.
Right. And it just is now much more woven into the fabric of the prose, and things like that that in ways we didn't have to focus on quite so or pay as much attention to back in the day. But that's fine because that's the path. That's how it becomes normal now. That's how the kids playing our games now are going to see that as, of course, that's the default.
Yeah.
You know, so and that's what you want. You know, that's the power of it, which is kind of, you know, you feel honored being part of that.
So, Dave,
You should.
I know you have a limited time, and we're about almost an hour in.
I appreciate it, but if you guys need to go, whatever you need, I'm here for you. So.
Oh, excellent.
Great. So after the past 4 years with Red being out, I don't know. I know you've been walking through conventions. I know because I met you at Gen Con. I don't know if you're into any of the communities, whether it's Reddit, Facebook, Discord, or you monitor any of that stuff. Is there anything that like you overhear that kind of puts a smile on your face when they talk about Red?
I do always find it fun when people who play both 2077 and Red kind of say they're having more fun in Red. That is always nice. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a not anything against 2077. That is an amazing product, but it's always nice to see that some of the sort of our old school 2045 stuff still resonates at least as strongly. So that's always good to feel. Because it can be a little tricky. It's right now. Sometimes I think people sometimes commingle the two a little bit, and they are two very distinct eras with their very distinct feels, and both amazing products in their own right, but again very different. Also, it's kind of what I've really enjoyed too is how easily people. When we first did Cyberpunk, it was the future. Now it's an alternate world. It is now its own timeline, its own reality that splintered off back in the 90s and so forth. And it's kind of nice to see how easily people have adopted to that. It's like they don't need it to be the future. They don't need it to be a science fiction in that terms. They fully embrace the alternate nature of it and the alternate possibilities that it reflects. And I gotta say, I find that very, very cool. I like that. It means that you don't have to do a reboot to try to catch it up with reality because you'll never be able to catch up with reality.
No.
So instead, you just move forward in the reality you've already created, and the fact that the audience follows you there and goes with you enthusiastically. That's really rewarding, shall we say.
So, the Cyberpunk franchise and Artel Saurian as a whole, like they started out as this tiny, I don't want to say fly by night, but I mean if you look at like Teenagers from Outer Space First Edition or Cyberpunk First Edition, like it's almost printed out on like mimeograph paper.
No, I know what you mean. I've got a copy of First Edition Mecton in the white box and all of that. Yeah, so I know what you mean.
And then in the 90s, they became one of the larger companies, but they were still like as the various tiers. You know, you got your large, your medium, your small companies, and they were kind of on the border between large and medium. They were putting out prodigious amount of books, and they were all high quality stuff. But you know, obviously our TSR and FASA, like they're the big dogs. And then Magic came, or Vampire came along and all that. And it then there was the period in the late 90s after Stormfront came out where it kind of died off, and V3 tried to rejuvenate it a little bit but ultimately did not. And so for like 10 years like all was quiet on the Western Front. But now the video game came out and the anime came out, and now you've got the new edition of Red, and there are board games and miniature games, and like it's just Artal Saurians and this franchise have blown up again to heights undreamed of in the 90s. Like the idea that there would ever be an anime based
Well,
on like
believe
a
me,
first class anime based off
yeah.
Cyberpunk, just I still have to pinch myself about that. Like, am I in a coma
Believe me,
somewhere having a dream?
we pinch ourselves too. Believe me. So,
And now the Cyberpunk franchise is one of the biggest things out there. Like it's a multimedia blitz, and it blows my mind. How does it feel to know that you were part of that and still are that ridiculously influential and prolific giant that it's become?
well, I mean, obviously, when we were doing it, we didn't. We'd always, yeah, we always dream. Okay, it could be this, and Mike was always very aware of the reality of the IP, the intellectual properties that we were working on, in addition to just being games and what we could do with them. But you're right; it took a long time and a period of sort of slumber, shall we say, for the franchise before it reawakened in Cyberpunk Reborn, kind of, shall we say. Although, believe me, there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes even during that period. You know, and Mike was off working in the video game industry, and that's where he made a lot of these connections that allowed the Cyberpunk 2077 to become a reality, and
Oh yeah.
the resurgence of Cyberpunk to be born out of that. And yeah, but yeah, we still like, even then, I don't think we fully appreciated the reality that could come out of that. I watch YouTube videos now on Cyberpunk, the history of Cyberpunk, and 2020, and I see them posting up artwork that I commissioned for books, and quoting books that I worked on or things that I wrote, and I'm just like, it's kind of mind blowing, truthfully, to feel part of that. It feels a little unreal, honestly. But at the same time, I always keep in mind, it's like, I'm so glad that that this is reaching people again, and that it seems to be reaching a broader audience than ever. That like a whole new audience is discovering cyberpunk, and both the genre as a whole and our game in particular. Um, but I always keep in mind that we were making at the time. We knew it was good, but at the same time, we didn't make it to become this thing. We made it to be the good thing it was at the time. The fact that it is now spun up into this thing is fantastic. But it's hard to take credit for it. You know what I mean? It's just the course that the events took, through, I think, very good business choices that Mike made, and keeping the IP alive and working the IP properly alongside CDPR, and basically allowing this whole resurgence. So I guess when it comes down to it, it feels a little unreal, and at the same time, it's very hard to feel too um, enamored of it, only because you know that it's kind of coincidence that we're along for this ride, shall we say?
Yep. So, just to reiterate on some of your points, I saw a YouTube lecture from Mike talking about IP. And I think this was when he was like either a guest lecturer or he was a teacher over at, was it Full Sail? I forget which school he was working at. But
Yeah, we did.
he talked about the IP and like basically taught these kids when you create an IP, you have to think about all of these things. Who has the electronic rights? Who has, the writer's right? Who has this? And, it was very insightful on exactly how you control your IP and how you control your own property, which I think anyone who's listening should check it out, especially if you're looking to do anything and create anything, whether it's gaming or novels or whatever. It's definitely very insightful. I was going to do a follow-up question to what you were saying after that, which is the
I will say you
histories.
are okay.
So you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned how you've been watching the histories of on YouTube from various content creators. What do you feel they get wrong most of the time, and what do you think they get right?
Hmm. I'm not sure I'd critique them quite on that level. I mean, some get some of the details wrong. You know, they may have read one source and made assumptions without maybe reading another source that filled out, you know, some other elements that they missed. Um, in general, they try very hard though to get it right. And I think something that's not amused, but intrigued me the most is how much they have focused onto the personal stories involved, how the stories of the characters, this set of characters that was created and that we've developed over time, have been the through line for so many things. It's, you know, you can talk about gross movements of, you know, Arasaka or Militech, but then you talk about Kai Arasaka, or you talk about Lundee from Militech. You talk about Alt, you know, in all her various forms. It's Morgan Blackhand. They're constantly coming back to the character stories that are woven through all of that, and I'm really pleased with that. I think it shows that there is a character through line through these stories that engages as much as a broader history that engages, and I think that's key.
Yeah,
If that makes
yeah.
sense.
I've watched quite a few of them. I know some of them really are great at the research. Right, they actually delve into the books from your age and really try to bring everything to the computer gamers to make them understand. Hey, this lore is not
Hmm.
just with the game. There's other places you can find it, and I think it
Hmm.
opens up the computer gamers to take a look at the tabletop, which is nice because that's a nice influx of new players, new ideas, new visions of how you can create cyberpunk. How,
I would absolutely agree with you.
However, the one thing that kind of annoys me at times is how they will take one character and there's maybe three sentences in the computer game, and you look at the background books and there's like only one blurb in one book about that particular character. For example, like I'm trying to remember what one that they did that I was like, how can you do a whole hour video about this one character when there is so little
It takes
information
30
about
seconds
them?
to read everything that was ever written about them.
Right.
Exactly. It becomes the Star Wars, you know, Mos Espa crowd phenomenon, where every
It's
character in the crowd in Mos Espa has to have a background written for them.
yeah.
You know,
It's the
yeah.
Boba Fett
So
effect. Oh, that guy looks
yes,
cool. Let's
yeah. Uh huh.
yeah.
No, I know what you mean, and you know, people will do that. Yeah, if it's giving them joy, that's fine. It's just whether they're trying to pass it off as canon that it becomes a problem. That, you
Yep.
know, because yeah, that's the only trick.
Yeah, and
So if they put a lot of
oftentimes,
disclaimers in front of it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, oftentimes
Mm.
I'll comment and be like, okay, you guys need to read this book, and this book, or
Yeah.
hey, I
I
talked to
mean,
Dave
Although,
Ackerman about this subject, or one of the other authors, and this is where that came
hmm
from, and
hmm
try to give them some guidance. But it's
there's a lot of that. It feels like
yeah,
grandpa. I always feel like grandpa coming in to tell those kids to get off his lawn and come gather around for story time. Um,
well, I'm sorry, you're telling them to read, and in the first place, that's a problem.
yeah,
So, because that's
that's very much a problem. Um, oh, there's some like lore conspiracy stuff that. All right, Stormfront.
hmm
at the end of the book, at the end of the adventure, two things happen that are very important that get completely glossed over. The first is they find Yorinobu. They find that Kei Arasaka has, soul killed him, and his engram is in a machine. His body is laying on the ground. Mm-hmm. It alludes to the fact that Spider or somebody grabs the engram. At the end of the adventure, at the very end, the last thing that happens is Spider boards K's submarine with Shaitan and Rogue, and they soul kill Kei Arasaka.
Well, technically, he soul kills himself, but yes.
Right. Well, I mean, with a gun in his head and all that. But yeah. So, I know you haven't played the game. I don't know how much they look to you for guidance if CDPR talk to you at all.
I'm not the one that they do. That is largely through Mike. He is the keeper of the lore with CDPR, and also Jay to some degree as well. So he works. They are the main ones with that. Where the new lore is going to come from.
Yeah, I've just got this theory that the reason they had Silverhand is okay. They had found Silverhand and Yorinobu's engrams. I think were stored in the same place. They don't mention it. They don't talk about it anywhere. But to me, that makes sense. And they cloned a body for Yorinobu, put the engram in there, and did whatever personality editing they tried and failed to accomplish. But I think what they're really doing is and the reason they're so invested in the Blackwall is that they're trying to find K's engram.
Oh, that's interesting.
Let's put it this way: the beauty of it is that the way we've set it up is that it's Spock's casket on the Genesis planet. It's
yeah, that's exactly
it. It's you don't know. It's anybody can come back. I can't say whether that's going to be the case, and there's implications that that K's and may have been final, but necessarily it doesn't have to be. So that's and I think leaving those threads open to be picked up is actually a strength. It gives us the chance to explore new things. I mean, and 2077, I think, has done a great job of picking up some of those things and going and drawing in characters that you would.
Oh my God, dude!
Yeah.
I really want to talk to you after you play the game, because so much of what was in 2020, so many little bits of lore just pop up all over the place in like random places. Like you'll pick up a little shard and it'll have this information from one of the books that doesn't serve the game in the slightest, but it lets you it's just an Easter egg for people who played the game, or it does serve the game and it is an important thing that you need to know. And there's so much of that. There are so many references to what you guys wrote for 2020. It blew my mind. Like, it was the second favorite thing about the game to me. The first was obviously just being able to walk around Night City. Like,
but
just being able to walk around.
Go ahead. And now one thing, to me, that's a credit to the crew at CDPR, who are, especially the ones that did the first passes on the game, they are such hardcore fans that they wanted a lot of that stuff there. That to them, that's their joy, putting that stuff in and doing those references, because 2020 was their Cyberpunk.
Yep. And
so now they're getting a chance to make their extension of it, but they want to make sure that the through lines are solid, that where this came from. And I give them nothing but full points for that. I think that I love it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we've had an interview with one of you old school Artelsorian guys, like it's just gotta be I don't know. It's got to be
It
cool to
feels
see
cool.
little bits and pieces
It
of
does.
what you created show up
You
on
know,
screen.
it does every time. Every time some little bit that comes up, and again, it's like we were raised on films and so forth of the genre. It's Blade Runner and all of those things. But now to see a cityscape like something straight out of Blade Runner, except that you're seeing Arasaka and Zeta Tech and all of these other and Petrochem and all these other logos that we created back in the day up on those buildings and such is
Dude,
it is pretty weird,
you get to go hang out at the Totentons, or
Exactly,
I
exactly.
mean, it's so bizarre that this is a thing I can do now.
Or even with the
But
afterlife
yeah,
having like the morgue tables and the
Yeah,
shelves and
like
stuff like that.
straight out of the
uh-huh.
book.
Yep. Yep. So and again, it's amazing. And it's kind of cool too because it's their version of it,
Yep.
which always varies just a little from what you have in your head and even what we put together. Because they're putting their spin on it and their presentation on it. So, which makes it
I
even more interesting because you get to see it's like, okay, that's how it resonated for you. So, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I was disappointed that the Forlorn Hope isn't represented in the game. That was
Well, hey,
wow.
give it time. Give it time.
Yeah. No, there's a sequel
Uh,
coming.
uh-huh. I'd say Jay's working on a book right now, and we certainly know where it's going to be located. So let's see what happens with CDPR in that regard. And again, I'm not trying to drop lead hints there. I don't know myself, but I can tell you that we're making sure that it is well established and it should have a life well beyond Cyberpunk Red. So
Awesome.
absolutely. So yeah, and again, it is amazing. It's in many ways the whole 2077 phenomenon has been akin to seeing a major tentpole movie get made about the franchise. So and so it just carries you so far that at some point it just becomes unreal. It's hard to imagine the wave being as big as it was and is still. So, and again, credit to CDPR for constantly improving the game. We all know it had a bit of a rocky launch and everything, but they have been steadfast in making the promises come true, and putting it together, improving it and making it a game that still has legs. So,
Yeah. No, it's
and
in my top 3 video games of all time.
Oh,
I
brilliant.
mean,
Again, man,
it's
I still got to get into it now. So now you
it,
guys are making me want to cut the time. So,
Definitely worth it, man.
it's up there with like top 3 video games of all time, and also top 3 video game stories of all time. It's number 1 for stories, followed by Red Dead Redemption 2
hmm
and Last of Us. But video games, it's up there with GTA Online
oh,
and Red Dead Redemption Online, Red Dead
hmm
Redemption 2. Like it's just a phenomenal game that
hmm
everybody kind of jumped on a bandwagon shitting on it for a while, and now they're coming back around.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, again, the CDPR did the work. You
oh, they
know,
did,
it,
and they brought
you
it
know,
so alive. I think it was the first, and granted, the last role playing game I was in playing from a computer wise was World of Warcraft, but so I kind of like waited for this game to come out to actually play it, and actually it got me hooked to all of CDPR's programs or games. I think the endings and the scenarios was the first computer role playing game that actually got me emotional about the whole
hmm
story, which
hmm
I've always viewed games as they're just games, and try not to get too attached to anything with it, but it was just amazing how well that game sucked you in. And I think Mike talked about how, because I know there was a big debate about, third person versus first person, and me and Derek have
hmm
our have our disagreements
We have
on the
very
whole
different opinions
right.
on those.
But I feel that
Mm-hmm.
that Mike kind of telling that team to go with first person really sucked you in and gave you more of an immersive experience that I don't think third person would allow it, because I think third person kind of still you're viewing down on this person versus looking out through their eyes.
I want to see my cool character doing cool shit.
Yeah. Well,
And I
there.
totally get that. And even tactically, sometimes third person can be a little better. But I agree from an immersion point of view, first person is definitely, more immersive. It is, if you want to tell the story, I think third person is the way to go. First person is the way to go. Um, and I really liked that CDPR made the Johnny Silverhand storyline, not just the current one, but his original storyline, so much a
Yeah.
part of this story. So that again, you're not just getting the 2077 story. You are getting 2013. You are getting 2020. You are getting,
Dude,
this is something that has been going on.
watching the way people have reacted to Johnny Silverhand blows my mind. The fact that you can see, if you just take it straight up, if the video game is the only thing you know, then you can
Mhm.
take Johnny at his word for everything that happens. Like, oh, that must be the way it happens. That's how he remembers it.
Uh,
But if you know the story, you know that from the very first moment, Johnny is lying to you about
yep.
everything. And he's trying to manipulate you. Like everything Johnny says or does to anybody is to
Mhm.
manipulate towards his own end. Even when he's being sympathetic, he's still
Mhm.
manipulating you.
Yep. Yep.
And
And what you even want to think about is this really Johnny? I mean, it
yeah, is
is,
it
but it's a
really
copy.
Johnny?
Yeah, exactly. So, and
Like a nuke went
no,
off under his cut in half ass. How do you retrieve anything from that?
uh, so,
Um,
and what has been changed? What is this version of him? Yeah, how is it different than the original? Might it be different than the original Johnny, or is this just a Johnny that has gone so, you know, so cynical, now and so bitter that he is willing to go down these roads? So,
yeah, how
yeah,
much of like Arasaka had him for a long time. How
yeah,
much of
hmm
what is there
hmm
has been just reprogrammed into that memory?
yeah,
Because
and I'm yeah,
Saburo never questioned him.
yeah. Mhm. But I do like the fact that they question it even in the game, which I think is really kind of
Yeah,
cool. So,
and
I have
all
seen enough of it
flat
to know.
out
Yeah.
tells you that's not
hmm
what Johnny is like. That he's lying to you.
Exactly. Exactly. So, hmm. But again, the fact that
It's really some brilliant writing.
it is, and it didn't hurt that they got Reeves to be the voice and the face of Silverhand.
No,
That again,
that
that
didn't
was
hurt at
that.
all. Except he's not blonde anymore. Every other character from the 2020 era, they make look exactly like they appeared in the books. Like Rogue is straight out of the book, same
Yep.
hairstyle and
hmm
everything. But
hmm
suddenly Johnny looks like Keanu Reeves,
Well, hey,
as opposed
small
to like the
sacrifices. Okay.
blonde. Yeah, as opposed to the blonde Bon Jovi looking dude.
Yeah, I'm with you. But again, small sacrifices, man.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
we'll accept it.
the payoff was worth it.
It was, it
um,
was.
but again, I just love the fact that that's the story. That they chose to make that one of the spine of their story. And that's a story that reaches all the way back to the 2013 edition. So
Yeah,
the
it
very
literally
spine that
goes
this
all the
whole
way back.
yeah, exactly. So I think that's fantastic. Again, it made sure that 2077 is, while it's certainly its own beast in many levels, has shows all its heredity, and I love that. And like I say, we're trying to work in that space in between now, which is always a little challenging. The 2045 space, which is the rebuilding from the collapse and everything, and at the same time, trying to weave into the 2077 space, because you have to make sure that we're still technically a prequel in many ways. So it's making sure that what we craft, eventually can fit into the 2077 space that everyone's experiencing.
Yeah, you're both a sequel and a prequel. You're a mequel. You're
Exactly.
middle child.
And that has its own challenges, I'll tell you. Because back in the day, it was like all wide open. It was like, okay, we want to blow up the cyberpunk world with Fourth Corporate War. Okay, I think we need to do that. Let's do that. And so that's what we went, and that's where we went. But now we have to work with them to make sure that whatever we do dovetails effectively. It's a different kind of challenge, but also it's like, as they say, limitations actually force creativity. And that's not a bad thing.
On that note, how much conversation is still going on between Artel Saurian and CDPR as far as lore goes? Like, obviously, they're working on their sequel. You're working on your projects.
I don't know how much you can talk about, but
I can't talk about specifics, but I can tell you that Mike is definitely still working with CDPR very closely. He is still our lore liaison with him, and even Jay Gray is working with them on some things and helping with some details on so forth. I won't go into any of the things that that CDPR is doing, but I can definitely tell you that there's a constant exchange of information between Artel Saurian and CDPR when it comes to the cyberpunk lore. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure Jay.
And it doesn't just go one way.
I'm sure Jay is happy that they moved to Boston with the whole cyberpunk division.
Well, they're still kind of settling that in, but yes, I think that's going to make communication a lot easier. We agree. So, and since Jay is on the East Coast, you might even be able to bob up there every once in a while and check it out.
Yeah.
So, lucky him.
Well,
so,
I
definitely
wanted to do a pilgrimage up there one of these days, because it's only I'm actually closer to Boston than Jay is. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But they're still getting settled in, so give them a little time. No. But yes, it's
then I'll start stalking.
Now you can sneak into the basement when they're not looking and just set up camp down there and just live in the basement.
No, man. Then that's
up through the vents.
They'd never be able to let you leave. Okay, that's the problem. So
Yeah, I'll
become an employee.
That's the problem. The problem.
I'll call up my local fixer. Assemble a team to do an infiltration. Maybe do an extraction.
The Peter Gunn theme.
The problem is they would still technically be the Megacorp. Okay. Which means they still got bigger hit teams than you do. So yeah.
Right. So, my edgerunners will work it out.
But they're a good one. There are ones that are producing stuff we want.
Yes,
so
true.
So we go with that.
So speaking of the games, what kind of cyberpunk game did you kind of lean towards? Was it a lot more of that kind of team in which you did extractions and various corporate espionage, or was it more? Because I know Derek is more of a nomad guy, so he loves running nomad life and trying to survive.
I love running themed games. Nomads, cops, espionage type stuff. Just anything where I can have some level of control over the
that's cool
glue that holds the campaign together.
Mm-hmm. When I was running 2020 stuff back in the day, because I haven't had a chance to run protracted campaigns of Red, mainly individual scenarios. It was an open freelance group, basically, of edgerunners. So they took a few missions, but what was interesting is one of the characters was a former holographic star called Manshadow, who was effectively almost a construct. He was heavily modified. And the campaign ended up drifting in a weird way into him being hired to do a movie in Egypt, in the deserts of Egypt and such. And the crew going as his entourage, basically, to Egypt to do this film and such, which accidentally precipitated a small scale incident on the border because there was all this hardware around, which made the neighboring country think that there was a military buildup. So they sent an expedition
Mm.
across the border. So there was this huge military conflagration, that they got caught up in the middle of. And this all devolved then later into a actually I even before we did Bubblegum Crisis, I had the boomers starting the boomers, and they started funneling into the campaign at that point, and it became the theme became that of synthetic life and how that fit in. And also, the man shadow character was like, he was trying to determine, was he synthetic life, was he a boomer, and didn't know it, and things like that. And all the players kind of gathering, rallying around that, and we had a blast with that. Actually, we had a
Man, you
really good time.
totally write that up. Put it somewhere. Post it somewhere. That's freaking awesome.
So it was a lot of fun, I will say. I had a great crew, though. Again, when you have a player who comes up with that kind of character concept and we build on it, and then everybody goes along for the ride, that's a great team. So
Yeah.
I think if you ask if I have themes in my Cyberpunk games, I really love truly dealing with exploring how the new tech is going to affect both people, and also how are the new minds going to interact with people. We're talking about creating new minds here, both altered human minds and completely artificial minds, which means creating a whole new life form in many ways. And how do you interact with that? How do how's that going to affect? I ran a game at Gen Con where the players were actually trying to investigate basically what turned out to be a networked mind of a gang that was holed up in the combat zone. And it was a rogue networking tool that was originally supposed to be used as an infantry combat tool to coordinate infantry squads. But it had become so complete that it actually, when used on a prototype, it actually networked people together and formed a hive mind, basically. Ooh. And they were ending up having to investigate, someone was missing, someone had gotten kidnapped and been brought into the hive mind, or at least that's what they were told. And they were investigating, trying to find out what was this about. I remember one of the best moments was when one of the netrunner, when they captured one of them, actually took the dongle, basically the input thing that created the hive mind. And he didn't know what it was at the time, and he plugged it into his own input socket and became part of the hive mind.
Nice.
And the rest of the game was played with the netrunner, one of the parties, part of this hive mind, and the rest of the players trying to figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, the corporation who had created the hive mind was trying to retrieve it. So,
that's cool.
And yeah, exactly. And that was but that's the kind of concepts I enjoy playing with in the games. It's like, okay, what is the hive mind going to be? Is it necessarily evil? The people in that group actually liked being part of the hive mind, and eventually were given a choice whether they want to stay or go, and most of them stayed. The idea that that it didn't obliterate their individuality, it just made them feel part of something. And in a world where being isolation is sometimes chronic, feeling really part of something can be important, can be special.
Right.
So, and so things like that I find interesting. What is this new technology going to expose us to, and what's going to come out of that? So that's one of the things I love about Cyberpunk in general, is that it lets you kind of explore those stories. So both the dystopian, the street against the corporations kind of thing, the have-nots against the haves, but also just we're creating this whole constantly mutating technological landscape that is going to create its own ecologies, its own minds, its own tools, and how is that going to change us? And how are we going to deal with those changes? So, okay,
yeah, and in the ever-present face of that, like, what is the new morality? How do you decide between what's right and what's wrong when this evil corporation also provides all these necessary services? In some cases, life-saving services.
Well, we're kind of living in that right now,
Oh, absolutely.
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so.
I
I
mean,
mean,
So,
we've got Monsanto out there, which has gotten to the point that, yeah, they're one of the most evil corporations on the planet, but they also feed the world.
hmm absolutely. So,
or
how do you, if you just go ahead.
or you have the emergence of AI and the whole concept of deep fakes and that craziness. You're thinking of, I mean, my
hmm
mind immediately when that first started coming out was thinking about the data crash, right? And how the
Yeah.
data crash just rewrote history.
Yeah, you can't
And
trust
now we
anything.
see how easy that is. Yeah. It absolutely shows
Oh
just
my
how easy
God.
that could be. hmm
When I first read about the data crash, I was like, my initial thought was, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like,
Yeah,
there are still people alive. They would remember what year stuff happened, and they would remember. But then the reality is we're seeing it every day. We forget that shit. We doubt ourselves. We doubt
exactly.
our own histories. We
Um,
doubt the
in
shit
fact,
that we lived through and experienced.
hmm and, I'm trying to remember if we actually did this. I got to double check with Red, but there was even this sub element of it where there was a virus that was eating paper pulp and
Yep,
destroying
That
books.
that's the one that I was like, what the hell?
that was in
Uh-huh.
V3.
So
Yeah, that was
yeah,
V3.
yeah, yeah, and we were talking about that was going to be part of data crash. So so that even then that information, so it was going to blur the lines even more and make it harder to retrieve that information. But even now it would be difficult because so much of it is just kept in electronic format, which is incredibly malleable and infinitely editable. So
Yeah, the problem with the
mhm.
paper eating thing is there's just I, I don't know.
Oh, I know it was
There's
a conceit, and that's why we didn't really go with it on the in red and so forth.
yeah, there's
So
just so many
yeah,
different kinds of paper, and like it
yeah,
would never
agreed,
work
agreed.
universally.
And I like the fact that now books are have a value in
Yeah,
the new world. That going back to the libraries, going back to the hard copies now has a value
encyclopedias are
to
now gold. That shit that I
exactly, exactly. So my that World Book, the green and white spines that you used to have on every bookshelf. So
I
yeah,
love my encyclopedias. I had to when I moved into the apartment, I had to get rid of my set of encyclopedias that I'd had since Jesus,
I know.
since I was like
And
6.
now we depend on Wikipedia and all of these other forms that really have to learn to filter. You really have to learn
Yeah,
to cross check and make sure that what you're getting is validated, because a lot of it doesn't have any form of validation or fact checking on it. I'm
yeah, you
sorry,
have
go
to
ahead.
be very, very careful with the media you consume, especially
Yeah.
if you're looking for factual information.
Mm.
Um,
And that's why the data crash is so fun, because it just brings that to the fore and makes that the new reality, where
yeah,
it's
the data
like
crash is totally like that's something that could happen. That's
exactly, it's
something that kind
everything's
of is happening.
yes, exactly, everything is becoming alternative facts basically. So, and that's a frightening thing. So, and that's what slows the recovery in many ways. It's why that it does take a while before things come back to the level of 2077. Because given the accelerated technological advancements that we were seeing in the 20s, the data crash slowed things down quite a bit. It was definitely a reset
Yep, and you have
that they had to build their way out of.
and you have people manipulating it to further their own goals, right?
Oh, oh, count on it. You know that
Oh,
there are
yeah,
people
from
out there
every
rewriting their
direction.
own
Like
histories. Yeah.
one person will write something, and then somebody else will come in and change that and write something else. Like
Oh,
it's
exactly.
insane.
But everybody in power has their own official version now of their history and their facts and so forth that they're presenting, with their authority. But how real it is it's very much based on what they felt they needed to craft. So it's very, in many ways it's very 1984, and
Yep.
that all facts now, all history is subject to rewrite and to elimination and restructuring. So, and I love that. I think that's both frightening,
Yeah,
because
it's
that's the few
terrifying.
things. Exactly. There's few things more dystopian than having your history taken away. But at the same time, all too prophetic. Um,
Well,
mm.
we're about an hour and 40 minutes. Um, I think we're kind of
But it
winding
has been a
down.
pleasure, guys.
And I,
I think my voice is starting to get a little,
yeah, I
but
was
but
noticing that. And I know you're a busy man, so
that's okay. But again, it's been a true pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Really
yes.
appreciate it.
David, I don't want to embarrass you. I'm just going to say, and I say this to all you guys, um, you have been more than an inspiration. Uh, I started playing Cyberpunk in 1989 and never looked back. Since 1980 or 1996, I've run the world's largest website dedicated to this game. Uh,
Hmm.
the influence you guys have had in my life cannot ever be understated. And I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you again. Uh, Without you guys, where would we be? Without you guys, loving this stuff, promoting this stuff, moving it forward, challenging us when we need to be challenged, and constantly keeping that energy alive. That's what it's about. It's about building that network
Yep.
and spreading the word and spreading the vision and the message. As Mike says, Cyberpunk is a cautionary tale. Not a you know something
It's not
to
a future
aspire
you want
to,
to
not
live
an
in. That's for sure.
aspiration. Yeah, it's not an
Right.
aspiration. It's yeah, and you guys help us keep that energy alive and that message out there. So thank you so much, man.
Wow.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Hmm. Anytime. It's been a true pleasure. Thank
All
you so
right, man.
much.
So, again, appreciate it. I'm not going to be at Gen Con this year, but I'm hopefully going to be make it every other year. So hopefully, I'll
Hmm.
catch you again in the near future. You're
Please,
always willing to
absolutely.
come back to our channel and drop in.
After I play 2077, I will let you know,
All
and then
right,
we can have another
Excellent.
definitely.
visitation.
There's a few of you,
Okay.
few of you grognards that we told that need to play the game and get back to us and get your
Yeah,
feedback.
I will totally cop to that. Yes.
So
So,
we're gonna
and
do.
when you guys are at Gen Con, if whoever does make it to, please come up at the booth and make sure to introduce yourself. Okay.
Oh, if I'm there, I will be probably running a game again
I was gonna
because
say
I.
Okay.
it's
Then
unlikely that I will ever have funds to make it to Gen Con, but if I do,
uh,
yeah, you will be one of the first people I look for.
please do, please do.
All right,
All right,
thank you.
guys. Thank you so much.
We're doing our
Thank you,
Guys,
outro,
David.
and we'll talk to you later.
you bet. Take care. All
Yep.
right.
So thank you all our listeners for listening in. That was David Ackerman. He is still a part of RTG and still producing stuff. So check out his stuff as our Talsorian continues to pump out more red. I am Cybersmily. I run a site called cybersmily.net. Has a bunch of different online tools and things for Cyberpunk Red as well as Cyberpunk 2020. Mostly Cyberpunk 2020 because I don't know. I don't want to compete with the mobile app, who did an amazing job as well. I'm also on various Discord servers. I have my own Discord server, which we do have some of these old writers popping in once in a while, giving some feedback. Also, head over to Cybernation Uncensored, which Forlorn Dopes has a channel on with Rob Mulligan. Again, I'm over there, dropping in, adding comments, as well as a crapload of other Discord servers. Kind of lurker on some of the Cyberpunk Reddit channels, specifically Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2020. Yeah, that's about it from me.
I am the other guy here. I am Wisdom 000. Uh, Derek Bernier, for those of you who care to know. I run Datafortress2020.com, and I have, as I said, since 1996. It is the largest, most comprehensive website for Cyberpunk 2020 materials you'll find. You can also find me on Facebook at both the Datafortress 2020 and Cyberpunk 2020 groups. I'm on most of the Cyberpunk Reddits, both for the tabletop game and the video game. I'm on a few Discords, including Cybersmilies and Cybernation Uncensored, Artalsaurians. By all means, reach out to us with any questions, comments, complaints, or criticisms. We love hearing from you. We very much like connecting with other fans of the game. We'd like to thank Rob Mulligan for hosting us
Here.
on his Cybernation Uncensored Twitch and YouTube channels.
And he's got a project that I'm very much looking forward to seeing. Looks like a live action,
movie?
little live action short for
what we've seen looks very promising. I'm very excited with his new project.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's about it. Farewell programs. We will see you 2 weeks. Yes.
I think so. Let me just 2 weeks. April 3rd is our next episode. Still haven't decided what we're doing yet. Might do part 2 of Land of the Free, unless we get another guest to join us. Hopefully we will. All right, guys. Till next time.
Peace.
Cybernation Uncensored.